The sound of soles clicking against the marble floor echoed the whole building, filled with people but otherwise silent, as a man dressed curtly from head to toe passed through the hallways until he reached the room and disappeared behind the door. It was when the people present in the building could finally breathe and let out a sound again. It was the terror this man had on the employees of his company, or the underground world he ruled. The kind of traumatizing effect he held on the best monstrous creatures that were no cleaner than him but stood no chance before him. If there was one thing he hated, it was wasting his time, which he could spend doing much more productive work, and right now he was pissed. One job his men had, and that certain job they failed to do so on time. As he stepped inside the huge conference room, he stopped before the long table that reached to the other end. It could easily accommodate up to 25 people, eyes falling on the papers placed in front of him on the surface. The four other men already present in the room were drenched in sweat. They knew. They pissed Jungkook off, and it was nowhere near a move that he admired for giving. The man had a stoic face, but devoid of expressions, as he went through each and every page calmly and read every little detail. Jungkook, consider yourself lucky. I can be merciful once in my life. Just one sentence, and he was gone. The work was done in a perfect manner, just as he has expected it. It was supposed to be. The problem was the waste of time. The people inside were shocked. It was safe to consider that they started to doubt if their boss was even in his right mind, because Jungkook was never once a forgiving personality. A little mistake could get you in a deep trouble, and the trouble never ended on firing. It was a deadly punishment no one admired. As Jungkook left the room, he marched towards the exit. He was late and angry, but had no plans of wasting any more time on the people that were not worth it. If there was one person who was worthy of his time and effort, that was his woman, the one he loved and admired the most in this entire world. Every Thursday, they ate together, while they prepared each other's favorite meal, a term placed by his wife which he seemingly never minded. He needed to get her favorite spaghetti from the store that was going to shut down in the next 15 minutes, the only store that sold that specific spaghetti in the area. The other was too far to be considered as an option at this hour. As he exited the building, his phone rang. It was his wife, Wyan. The name alone held the power to ease the clench of his jaw and provide him peace. The voice that came from the other end, once he picked up the call, was enough to draw his blood white. The walls of his heart constraining with terror, and the rage that started to boil in his system. Henry. Oh, John. I have been trying to talk to you for a month, but guess now. We are finally getting to that point, aren't we? A voice that filled Jungkook with disgust. It was only one sentence that was enough to tell him that his wife was in the hands of his rival. The call ended without exceeding any further. He sprinted towards his car and called his best man by his side. He swore by the next breath he took. If even a single strand of hair on her head felt any pain, it was him against the world burning down to ashes. Waking up gasping for the air at the sudden impact caused by an unknown event, her eyes snapped open, and her heart banged insanely. The man had thrown a bucket of cold water on her. It was enough to draw her breaths away for a good moment. As she took in her surroundings, she remembered going over to the shopping with her security guard, provided by Jungkook, but she couldn't make out how she ended up here. That didn't matter. The problem was she was here tied to a chair with strangers, probably criminals, surrounding her with no source of protection. All she wanted was to disappear in her husband's arms, where she felt the most protected. So, you're John's treasure, she heard one of them saying as he stepped forward towards her. Henry knelt down in front of her, twirling a knife in between his fingers. Ryan, he's going to kill you. Oh, you heard that? He laughed, and so the other man in the room. That only filled her with disgust she wanted to throw out on him. Henry, he won't kill me as long as his precious treasure stays with me. His amusement filled eyes stared down at her and hand ruffling through her hair. He took her photos and walked out of the room, leaving her alone in the darkness with no source of light. It scared her, but not more than the man. Jungkook, please hurry up. I'm too scared. Henry sent those pictures to Jungkook and smirked in victory, knowing the man must be going crazy by the second. He started with his demands one by one. Every 15 minutes he placed a demand, and the next moment it was granted. He wondered just how much the mighty John loved this girl. 3 hours. She stayed in that dark, shady place for 3 hours. Fear clenched her heart and made her unable to breathe properly. She trusted Jungkook, but he was not coming. Every passing minute felt like hell. The thought of him getting even a moment late was terrifying her to extreme extents. The door suddenly burst open. A man filled with anger marched in. It was the same man from before. He stopped before Ryan, pulling onto her hair, and left a huge deep cut with his knife over her arm, another one near her collarbone. She screamed and cried out in pain. They stung so bad. Henry, looks like your man doesn't love you enough. He made a video of her crying. It was the time when Jungkook had suddenly stopped responding to his demands. Henry, in fact, this is not enough. How about you be the pretty little hostage you are and do your job well? She shook her head desperately, scared to death. Ryan, stay away from me. Henry laughed and leaned down to her level. Oh, sure, I will. Once I undress you enough to enjoy the view, trust me, your husband is going to enjoy the same. Her color drained out of her face at the horrific thought of his hands on her. She kicked him across his jaw. It took all of her strength, but it left enough impact to have Henry fall back, holding his jaw that started bleeding. He spat out a tooth that he lost due to the impact and screamed out of anger. Henry, you want to die? If anything, it only raised her fear. She screamed, trying to move back when he marched towards her, but the sound of gunshot had stopped his moves. The doors burst open and the sound of bullets firing increased. It was a bloodbath outside. But before Henry could take any precautionary step, he was held back as Jungkook's men burst in. Her eyes fell on Jungkook, who rushed in holding a gun. There was blood sprawled on his clothes, but regardless of that, he fell before Ryan and looked at her state. She was shaking miserably, unable to breathe properly, and blood dried around her wounds. As much as it angered him, her comfort was before everything. He untied her and took her in his embrace, and she cried out loudly. Jungkook, it's okay, princess. I'm here. I got you now. She stayed there for as long as she needed him, till her stop stopped and her heartbeat got back to normal. Jungkook, Henry, he is mine, he said to the only man present in the room by now. The chaos outside had came to a stop, indicating the John's victory. They could handle everyone, but he was going to deal with Henry himself, until he was sure the man begged for his own death. Wyan, why did you take so much time? I was so scared. Jungkook stayed there on his knees as he treated her wounds with utmost gentleness. Jungkook, you don't have to be scared anymore. I'm not leaving you again. He wiped her eyes every time the tears rolled down. He would do it again and again for as long as they continued to drop. Jungkook, I'm going to make sure nothing like this ever repeats again. And I will make sure you will be protected exactly like you are in my arms. She nodded and looked down. Her eyes teared up, and without a complaint, he wiped them again. Jungkook, I'm sorry. Please forgive me. She shook her head and fell in his embrace again. The warmth engulfed her, and she fell into serenity knowing nothing in this world could harm her in those arms. Ryan, it's not your fault. I'm glad that you came. Jungkook wrapped a coat around her and picked her up. He made sure her face was hidden in his neck so she wouldn't see any gruesome sight. Once he stepped out, it was nothing but dead bodies and blood everywhere, while his men stood guarding the area. He nodded at them once and took Ryan home. He treated her with such care and gentleness, fed her meals, and helped her to sleep all the while, never leaving her side. The only thing that was going to somehow calm the foaming anger residing in him would be bringing Henry to his end by a slow, painful death, and he did. Took days and weeks torturing him till nothing remained of him. When it was not enough, he took Vian to his private island for a trip. Seeing her happy and lively once again was when he could finally be at rest. Jungkook! She came in rushing through the back door of the villa they were staying in. The beach spread across the backside where she stayed most of her time playing around. Vian, look, I found a seashell. She stopped before him in the kitchen where he had just returned to have some water. Jungkook knew she was extremely happy here, and something about him made him want to stay here for as long as she wanted. But the work back at country demanded his presence. While she beamed at the beauty of the pearl she found it there, he couldn't help but kiss the flush of her cheeks. They were red. She was glowing. She looked healthier and happier, and that was everything he needed. Wine, it's so beautiful. Jungkook, do you like it that much? She nodded and he wrapped his arms around her waist. Jungkook, let me make you a necklace with those pearls and make you wear it. Then we can debate over who is prettier. She blushed and hit his chest. Where did he learn those lines from? It was all it took for Jungkook to laugh and kissed her. God, she was going to be the death of him.